So recently Elon followed you.
Yep.
On Twitter.
Yep.
What's going on? Welcome back to The Observation. I'm back after a much needed vacation in Hawaii. I have a little bit of a tan, but I'm excited to be back in New York. And today I'm thrilled to have on the show a good friend of mine, national correspondent for Fox News, Bill Melugin, who's covered a wide range of topics, including mass shootings, the French Laundry debacle, and most notably coverage down at the border. And Bill's had a crazy day. You've been going for about 14 hours.
Been a long day. Been since the early morning hours, but good to see you.
I know, it's so good to see you. So thank you so much for taking the time. We're the last show of the day. We're after Hannity. We're like the
the late night version. Yeah.
We're gonna get a little bit more out there than Fox, but I don't know if that's possible. I don't know. A lot of people may not know, and I was just thinking about this today. We've known each other almost 10 years.
Yeah, it's been about a decade, right?
Which is wild. Yeah. Time's flying.
Yeah, I started my career in El Paso at KFOX. You were a student at NMSU. You were a journalism student, right?
Yeah.
Weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was 2013. So yeah, it's been about 10 years.
Yeah. And how does that feel? Like such a journey from.
Yeah. Like looking back on it, it just feels like the time went by like that. In the moment, it felt kind of slow, like progressing through each year. But looking back on it now, it feels like it's been like 3 years, to be honest.
Did you think that you were going to get to this level of success? Because I kind of felt like you always had that X factor about you. I don't know why.
It's what I always wanted, and I bet on myself.
Yeah.
And I knew I had the work ethic to do it. It's just would the talent catch up to it at some point? Because I started my career off with not the most confidence. I had to make my mistakes early on and kind of learn how things work and watch some of my role models and kind of learn in a smaller market like in El Paso and slowly work my way up the chain before I got comfortable enough. But did I think I was going to be in the position I am now 10 years ago? Absolutely not. Did I want to be? Yes.
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
I also feel like in those 10 years, and one of the reasons why I feel like I didn't go the traditional route of what you did was I felt that media changed so much from 2013. Obviously, we had the 2016 election, which feels like was a very big turning point for things like misinformation, fake news, things like that, where all of a sudden the media became almost like the villain of sorts. And how did you find that?
Well, I mean, it might be accurate in some cases. I mean, there's been a lot of public distrust in media and a lot of people have lost faith in the media. And I understand that based off some of the things that have happened. But when it comes to my reporting, what I try to do is like when I'm at the border, for some instance, I try to make it to where there's no disputing what's going on because I'm just showing a mirror back to the country with our live shots and with our drones and showing you can't dispute some of the images we get, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to stand there and say, in front of an empty field, anonymous sources tell me that 500 people crossed illegally this morning. I'm going to show you live on our drone as it's happening that second, 500 people crossing the river that morning. And even when I was doing my investigative reporting, the entire motto I based my career off of basically is afflicting the comfortable and comforting the afflicted. Like I like going after people, powerful people who don't want light shown in certain areas, and that applies to what we're doing now at the border. For a long time, Fox was the only media outlet down there covering it consistently. Now the others have started kind of covering it within the last month or so, but it's a big story down there. Whether or not you believe illegal immigration is a big issue or not, there's a lot of tentacles that come out of it, not just a humanitarian issue or border security, the amount of fentanyl pouring into the country now. Yeah. I mean, people our age, we all know at this point somebody who's either OD'd on fentanyl, died, or a friend, family member, that sort of a thing, and it's just getting worse each year. So I understand the public distrust of the media, but the way we get that trust back is just by doing solid reporting that they can verify, they can see with their own eyes, and you let them decide. Like, I'm not out there saying everybody should think X, Y, and Z about the border. I literally just try to show the video, show them what's happening, and then they can take that information and run with it.
What do you find different compared to 2013? Is it just absolutely because you're already in El Paso, and now you're not in El Paso. You were in El Paso recently, and then you're usually at Eagle Pass.
So
what have you seen the difference in the past 10 years?
I mean, the numbers have just absolutely exploded through the. I mean, all-time records across the board. Mass illegal crossings, lowest deportations ever, most gotaways, most migrant deaths ever. So back in like 2013, 2014, that was the Obama administration, and a lot of people don't know this, but Obama deported more people than any other president recently. Some of his critics called him the deporter in chief. And he had his own immigration surge. It was a summer of unaccompanied children showing up, and that was a big story back then. But the numbers now, I mean, it's when you have more than 200,000 people a month for 10 months straight coming across, and not even including the gotaways. Those are astronomical numbers. Like just since October 1st, since the new fiscal year started, there have been over 700,000 migrant encounters at the border. That's equivalent to a population of the city of Boston coming across in just over like a little over 3 months.
It's absolutely insane. I saw this video that you posted, or it was on one of your clips, and it basically was you were talking to some of the people that were crossing, and it seemed not arduous. It felt like people were just kind of walking through, and you were saying, "Is the border open or closed?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's open. It's open."
Yeah,
and everyone, I'm not trying to paint a show on immigration in any way either. I want to have conversations about things that are happening, and this feels to be one of the biggest topics at the moment that people aren't discussing. And I feel like people our age maybe are even tuned out to television, so maybe it's the older generation that's tuned into this, and why I wanted to talk with you about it so much. But it feels like immigration, it used to be a hot button issue. You were for a long time the only person even covering it. How does that feel? Do you feel like you're just, sometimes you feel like rewarded by that coverage, or do you feel like no one cares, or now people are finally caring?
It was a weird feeling when crazy stuff would be happening down there. Like, for instance, we were the first ones at those 15,000 Haitians under the bridge in Del Rio in summer of 21, and we were the only media down there for days.
Yeah.
And then the others started showing up. Like, in situations like that, it is baffling as to what takes so long to cover it. But I mean, it was 2016. Immigration was a huge part of the election cycle, right? That's what Trump based his entire candidacy off, was build the wall and securing the border and that sort of a thing. And yeah, I mean, it's under this administration, the priority it has felt like really hasn't been at the border, and the numbers reflect that. I know they keep saying that the border is closed and secure, but look, if we're calling a spade, the numbers don't reflect that, right? When you have over 2.7 million encounters in a single year, I mean, that's not even including gotaways. Yeah. And the numbers are just astronomical right now. And the crazy part is it just keeps going up. Like, it hasn't plateaued. Like, 2021, 1.7 million. 2022, it was like 2.4 or 2.7 million. Now we're on track this year to possibly hit like 3 million or higher. So they keep breaking their own records. And the question is, when is it going to stop? Because I'm sure you've heard all the news and the drama about Title 42, which is what they're using to like expel migrants, and it keeps the numbers a little bit lower. Once that drops, I mean, then you're going to have a huge rush of people on the border. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. That's expected to possibly go away this springtime.
Insane. I think it's a little interesting too. On the left, you hear a lot about that the people coming across are mother and like children, and on the right, it's terrorists. And surely it can't be both, but maybe there's mother terrorists, I don't know, walking across the border. But what is the actual sentiment? Who are these people that are coming across? Because it feels like the country's divided on who this person is,
It's a mixed bag of everything. A large majority of the people are decent people looking for work and for better jobs and to meet up with family, but that's not asylum. U.S. has strict asylum laws. You have to show a reasonable fear, legitimate fear of persecution in your home countries. Wanting to come here for work or for a better job, or because you don't like the home country, or the weather is bad, or wanting to see your family here, that's not legitimate asylum. And a lot of the big groups that we show on TV, the people turning themselves in by the hundreds, are those folks. People simply looking for a better life. That's why they turn themselves in. They're expecting to be released into the country. They don't think they're going to get deported. I mean, who's going to go turn themselves in if they, you know what, I'd love to sit in a jail cell for a few weeks and then get deported at the end. No, they think they're going to get a court date and get released into the country. While that is happening, there's another tentacle of this. So border agents, when these groups of several hundred come across, they got to show up and do all this paperwork and processing and essentially be social workers for these hundreds of people. And that pulls agents off the front lines. And when that happens, the gotaways, the evaders, they all slip through. And like the last few months alone, each month has had more than 70,000 gotaways. Those are the criminals. Those are the guys dressed in camouflage, wearing carpet on their shoes to mask their footprints. There have been 98 people on the FBI's terrorist watch list arrested at our border. There's been over 1.1 million gotaways since Biden took office. So how many more of those criminals or potential terrorists, whatever you want to call them, bad actors, are in that group that got away? We'll never know because they were never caught.
Yeah. I think there's another interesting thing too about the coverage down at the border and just overall sentiment. I remember, I had a college job down in Las Cruces, and I remember someone coming in one time and speaking Spanish saying that they were going to come back later, not knowing that we understood Spanish, and that we were like, why are you going to come back later? And they just walked out of the yogurt shop that I was working at and totally left. You would hear other stories sometimes of 30 bodies found in a ditch close to Las Cruces or right side out in Ciudad Juarez, like right across the border.
Yep.
I feel like those stories, if it was a different country, if that was Canada, if that was somewhere else, you would hear that on the news. For some reason, our government doesn't find it important, but they find Ukraine important. And it just doesn't feel like it gets the coverage, or these lives don't matter quite as much as anything else. And the cartel, I don't know what it is, but it's always shocking to me that the cartels basically just run shit.
Yeah.
And there's really no coverage of 30 bodies buried in a ditch. Are you kidding me? That's insane.
Well, and look at what just happened in Mexico just a few days ago. The Mexican government launched that operation to capture El Chapo's son, Ovidio Guzman.
Yeah.
Black Hawk helicopters shooting machine gun tracers down at cartel convoys. Planes, civilian aircraft on the tarmac at Culiacan Airport getting shot at by the cartel, ambushes, 30 people dead, 10 soldiers, 19 cartel members. And President Biden's in Mexico right now, and it's been basically like radio silence. Like Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor, said there's not going to be any policy change in terms of like going after the cartels more or crack down. The Mexicans said the same thing. So there's this huge shootout, this huge war between the Sinaloa cartel and the Mexican government. And the Sinaloa cartel is one of the ones primarily pushing the fentanyl into the country along with CJ&G. And there's not really a change in posture on either side of the border.
It's mind blowing to me. What is your honest feel of why the administration gets to pick and choose and like cherry pick what items it feels important on when that feels seemingly one of the largest pieces of news that have come out recently?
I honestly don't know.
You have to have like some sort of,
Democrats like Representative Henry Cuellar of Texas, who have like talked to the White House, and they tell us that they feel the White House is essentially being influenced by immigration activists. Like the White House isn't calling the shot. It's not President Biden calling the shots. It's like immigration activists in the White House calling the shots for him. And like even the same thing about DHS Secretary Mayorkas. Like a lot of the border contacts I talk to say he's a really smart guy with a law enforcement background who knows how to do the job. They're just not letting him do the job. And whether or not all of that is true, I don't know. I don't have any White House contacts. They're not the biggest They're not the biggest fans of me. But to answer your question, I honestly don't know.
The White House thing brings up the article that was written about you. Was it the AP?
It was Politico.
It was Politico?
Yeah.
I just want to get your thoughts on how you feel about how you've been portrayed by the White House. It says that you have a growing presence online, but there's an increasingly frustration with his on-air coverage, arguing that there is an alarmist quality to it. How do you feel about that?
They say my coverage is alarmist. I say what's happening at the border is alarming. That's literally the fact. They don't like the fact that we're using drones to pull back the curtain on what's happening down there. They can say whatever they want and launder their comments through a media outlet. That's fine. They're not going to stop us from covering it.
Love that. Yeah. Went in on you. How does it feel now to be kind of like, it's always funny too, in journalism school, they teach you never to become the news, but then once you kind of get so far in your career, you inevitably do become the news in some way. How does it feel to sort of be covered in that way?
It was weird because the way they wrote it, you'd think I'm standing out there saying President Biden is the worst president ever, and he needs to be impeached or something. I've never said anything of the sort. All we do is we go out there and show what's happening. And what was even weirder was the day after that article aired, they did a follow-up where they're like, a Democratic source reached out to us and said, we missed the best part about Bill Melugin. He used to go by Billy, and when he was in college, he worked at an Abercrombie and Fitch store. And then they pull an interview that I gave to like the ASU school newspaper in 2010, where I evidently gave a quote where I was like, I was like studying for break, and recruiters came up to me and said they liked my look and wanted to hire me.
What does that have to do with anything?
I have absolutely no idea. But Politico felt it was important to put in the next day from a Democratic source. So that I used to go by Billy and worked at Abercrombie and Fitch in college.
Why is Billy notable? I think you should go by William. I think William's such a nice
That's
name.
what my mom says when I'm in trouble as a kid. No.
Really?
Yeah, it's too late now.
No, you've already established your name.
Yeah.
It's fine. That is funny. Billy.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yes.
So back to the border. I know you've been cranking border stuff all day, but Biden just visited the border.
Mm-hmm.
And it was discussed that basically it was turmoil down there, and that very quickly within a week everything was pretty much cleaned up and buttoned up when he was down there. And he actually didn't visit some of the main entry points.
Mm-hmm.
Where was he exactly visiting?
He basically started off at a port of entry.
Yeah.
There's not really anything happening at the port of entry. That's where legal crossings happen via vehicles and pedestrian traffic.
Yeah.
All the illegal crossings are between the ports of entry,
Yeah.
under the bridge, in the river.
Of course.
Over 200,000 people a month. He didn't go there. He didn't see any migrants. He didn't speak to any migrants. He went to a migrant assistance center run by El Paso County where magically there wasn't a single migrant there that day.
Yeah.
Then he went down to the border wall to take a look at a part of the wall that has like no action whatsoever. He didn't go look where there's holes in the wall where people are sneaking through and running across traffic and disappearing. He didn't go down to the river where the Texas National Guard is posted up with concertina wire now because they feel they have to do the federal government's job. He didn't go to the central processing center where like 1,000 migrants are being held. Yeah, he didn't go anywhere where you would actually learn something about what's happening down there. It was obviously a very controlled, calling it what it is. It was a photo op.
Photo op.
You know,
Yeah.
that's what it was.
Yeah,
So,
sad. So, you know, the border towns I feel like are the ones that are hit the most and somehow never talked about. We totally discard those Americans who their farms are affected. Can you talk a little bit about the Americans and the people that are being affected at the border?
yeah, so we talked to a ton of people who live down there, whether it's ranchers or people who have property up by the border wall, and all of them are dealing with all sorts of stuff, whether it's a chance of a human smuggler bailing out in their front driveway or people running through their alley in the middle of the night or people dying on their property or people just running through all over the place. And it's bipartisan. People are ticked off. Like, I mean, we have South Texas is a predominantly Democrat blue area.
Yeah.
And we have people who come up to us when we're down there and they say, hey, you know, we don't typically watch Fox News, but they shake our hands and they're like, hey, thank you guys for being down here and covering this.
Yeah, wow.
So yeah, I mean, it's ranch owners down there always having their fences broken and cut into, their livestock get out, they find bodies on their property damage. And the other thing is, like, it's not just along the line of the border. Like, this stuff goes inland quickly with the human smuggling. Like in San Antonio, that's like hundreds of miles inland. And this last June, I mean, 53 migrants were found dead in a trailer outside San Antonio, and they all literally cooked to death like they were in an oven because the smugglers left there. Like, all this stuff goes inland. The fentanyl goes inland. It doesn't just stay at the border. And people living in interior cities in like the Midwest or the East Coast or whatever may feel like the border's super far away from them and doesn't have anything to do with them. But now it's like literally being brought to their doorstep when you have like Governor Abbott busing migrants here.
Yeah.
And then you've got fentanyl going all across the country. So the longer it goes on, the more it's just going to keep, you know, spreading through the country.
I totally agree with that. I think people have been able to look away for a long time. And as you know, you grew up in California, I grew up in Arizona, moved to New Mexico later on, but I remember one time my dad was driving me and my brother to school and we got rear-ended by an illegal immigrant, and obviously had no insurance and like dad got pretty banged up. Everyone was fine, of course, but it was, you know, there's situations like that you come across all the time, and then the American, the person that is just trying to live their normal life here and operate cannot really do so, and it foots the bill for that. And it basically... It's unfortunate, and I hate to like make it political, but it's hard not to. It's happening to everyone. It doesn't matter who our political affiliation of driving to school. You know, that immigrant is going to affect anyone living down there. And these people who don't live in Arizona, didn't live in New Mexico, haven't worked in Texas, they don't get that. But now, sadly, you know, I've had a friend in the past year that passed away from a fentanyl related death, and it's really sad to see, and it's going to start affecting a lot of the East Coast or the Midwest.
Well, think about when we were in college, like the NMSU or the ASU days, that sort of thing. Like, kids were popping Adderall all the time, studying for tests. They didn't know what they were taking. They didn't know the milligrams of anything. People were sharing stuff all the. These days, like you're dead if you do that.
Yeah.
You have no idea what you're getting. In 1 decade, I mean,
I wouldn't touch anything. Not that I do, but I even saw something recently too. I saw it on Twitter. It was someone had put like a sign on a bathroom, and it was like, obviously don't do cocaine in the bathroom, but if you do, we have fentanyl test strips available at the bar.
That's crazy.
Which I was like, kind of shout out to the bar, honestly, because it's like save lives. There must have been something that happened, and they're like, people are going to do this regardless, and if you are, at least maybe we can help them in some way. You can't really stop people from doing drugs necessarily, but my God, like what is happening to people is insane. Like especially in New York, I wouldn't trust anything here or anywhere. Not to be advocating for drugs on the pod, but you know what I mean? Like it is that scary, and it was not like that.
And now more places are starting to keep Narcan on hand.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So what do you find is like the remedy for this? I mean, it's hard to say that there is one because I think everyone's been trying to solve this for so long, but what do you feel like would be a solution?
Well, it's going to sound cliche because everybody says it, but like nothing will ever change unless Democrats and Republicans come up with some sort of legislation. In the meantime, a Band-Aid approach, you have to take away what are called pull factors, like what's bringing people here in these big numbers. And number one, that's mass catch and release. Like, I mean, the people are showing up in such big numbers because they know if they step foot on U.S. soil, they got a pretty good chance of being released into the country because our system is so overwhelmed. I mean, our immigration court backlog is in the millions. Like, people are getting court dates 3, 4, 5 years down the road, and deportations are at their lowest levels ever. So, I mean, if I was a migrant in some country with no job, I'd probably do the same thing. And until you take the pull factors away or change enforcement mechanisms or pass some sort of legislation that allows people a legal pathway for people to come here and secures the border at the same time, nothing is going to change. And I feel like, both sides, obviously, within the last couple of decades have used the border as a political football at certain points. But now we're at a point we've never been at in history with the numbers and how bad it's gotten. So something's got to change soon. Hopefully obviously it seemed to be a photo op, but at least he finally went down there.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the first time in his career. So at least just going down is a start.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of have to see. But at the same time, maybe they feel that the Democrats perform much better in the midterms than they thought they were going to, and maybe they feel that it's not that big of an issue to voters, and they don't have to make a bunch of changes. But we'll see.
Yeah. We'll be following along. I mean, my parents were just like, we love Bill's coverage. Just please tell him we said hello.
Tell him thank you. Hi, Aubrey's parents.
My mom was like, make sure you say it. I was like, all right, Mom. Okay, I want to just a little bit background on like what it's like to work at Fox and what your experience. Do you have any crazy stories at Fox or in like reporting that you feel like was a moment that sort of made you and put you on the map?
I wouldn't say there was any like one story that elevated my profile. I mean, it was like,
because you've been just chugging along. First of all, I want to go back to your work ethic, unparalleled, has been just chugging. Like the reporter grind is very hard, and you have been chugging along for years. And
thank you. It's been kind of like
it's not like you get one story and you're like on the map.
Yeah,
but like, is there something that?
Yeah, it was like a slow trickle over the years, but like the stories that got like the most like national recognition, obviously the French Laundry with Gavin Newsom when we got those. Can you just tell that story again for the people? Yeah, so basically it was during the height of COVID, and California had all these strict like lockdown rules and I forget, it was like lockdown or stay at home or like outdoor dining. All those COVID rules were going on. Yeah. And it was before Thanksgiving, and Gavin Newsom had like a press conference telling people like here's what you need to do on Thanksgiving, like avoid having this many people indoors, like wear a mask. There was even guidance from the California that said take care in between bites. But so crazy stuff like that was going on, and he's telling people like social distance for Thanksgiving and be careful and this, that, and then a source gave us photos of Gavin Newsom at the French Laundry eating dinner in a crowded indoor room with a bunch of like healthcare lobbyists and executives and officials from the California Medical Association, if I remember correctly.
So awful.
Indoors, like doing exactly what he had just told Californians not to do. And I remember when when we like, if I remember correctly, because it was like 2.5 years ago now, when we reached out
Crazy, by the way.
when we reached out to his office, they were trying to say that it was an outdoor dinner, and it's like, oh, how many outdoor dinners have you been to where there's a chandelier above your head? You know,
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Obviously that story blew up, and it was kind of the beginning of those hypocrisy stories. We then saw like Nancy Pelosi getting her hair done, and then like people, and I forget who it was in Chicago, did something, and then an LA County Supervisor, Sheila Kuehl, went to dinner just hours after she voted to ban outdoor dining.
Yeah, and there was the Pelosi haircut. There was all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so it was just like wave after wave of hypocritical stories. But the French Laundry one is probably like the biggest national one. Yeah.
That was pretty funny. When are you gonna get out of California, Bill? I feel like that's not your place.
I mean, I was born and raised in SoCal, but down in Orange County, not LA.
I know, but
but the thing is, I'm never in California these days. I'm always in Texas, or, you know, so
just in terms of the state and its climate, I feel like you gotta move to Texas. Feels like you spent half of your year in Texas, weren't you?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't know.
How does that feel though? Like, do you feel like you can maintain a personal life and do things?
It's tough. I mean, the social life is taking a hit, but like the way I look at it is I'm young, single with no family, like one time in my life. If I'm ever going to do this job with this kind of traveling and going all over the place, now's the time to do it, because down the road, that option may not be available anymore. So totally. I love what I do. It makes the time go by quick. It's a grind for sure. But like I've always wanted to be a correspondent for Fox. That's always been my goal since I was younger. I love where I work, who I work with. They all have my back. I've got no complaints, and you know, even if the social life takes a hit a little bit, it's all good. As long as you love what you do, it's all worth it, you know?
Yeah.
So.
And you met some of your coworkers, I guess, colleagues for the first time this week since you flew to New York. So that's what you were doing today.
Yeah, so I've been working out of Fox's New York bureau, and it's the first time I've been in the building since 2014, back when you and I were in like El Paso. Yeah, so it's been like 8 or 9 years, so it's the first time I've had a chance to meet a lot of these people face to face who I'm hearing in my ear talking to me every day for hundreds of live shots. So it's been really cool. It's an awesome building. It's huge. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
You know, and everybody's so awesome in person.
Favorite person at Fox? Don't want to make you pick someone.
Favorite person at Fox? You know, like the two anchors that I like watch the most and admire the most are Brett Baer and Trace Gallagher. Trace is in my bureau in LA, and then Brett is in our DC bureau. Yeah. I honestly, I love everybody at Fox, but I watch Trace a lot. He's in our LA bureau now, and he's just a master at his craft. And then Brett is so good on the special report show.
Totally.
But it's hard to pick. I honestly, everybody there is so good, and they're anchors or reporters for a reason there, because they're pretty damn good at their job, and I argue Fox is the best at it.
Yeah. So recently Elon followed you.
Yep.
On Twitter.
Yep.
What's going on?
I don't know. I mean, he started a couple months ago, maybe like 2 or 3 months ago, just like replying to my border post when I would post like some of the more crazy videos from the border, and he'd start replying like, "Wow," or "Whoa, that's crazy," or "How is this happening?" And like he started commenting more and more, and then he just started following me one day, and I was like, whoa. And now he's still, whenever we post some of our craziest videos, he replies and is like, why isn't this getting more coverage? Or he replies, wow, in some way. And like whenever he replies to something, the engagement on it shoots up like a missile. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So apparently he's got some interest in the border.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting. What are your thoughts on Elon?
I mean, he's freaking brilliant. I mean, no one can deny that. He's obviously, in the middle of the news cycle almost every day now because of when he bought Twitter. But even before the Twitter purchase, like everything with SpaceX, I watched that Netflix documentary on him and like how close he was to failure. I think he was like one launch away from losing all his money with it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's regardless of what you think about his politics or him, like the drive he has, and he's clearly knows what he's doing to have these with Tesla and with SpaceX, that sort of a thing. So I'll leave his politics for other people to dissect, but clearly a brilliant guy. And if he wants to come down to the border with us sometime, open invitation.
Yeah, Elon, come down to the border. Come check it out.
Yep.
Go with Bill.
Yep.
So have you guys talked at all? Or
no, we've never like DM'd or anything. I haven't met him.
Yeah.
So it's just been him like replying to some tweets.
We'll have to figure out a way to get him down there.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
That'd be cool, huh?
All right, Phil, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
We'll have to have you back out next time that you're in New York.
Absolutely.
We'll be back next time. Good luck and Godspeed.